guys, it's Alec Torelli. Welcome to the hand of the day. Today's hand is a heads-up session 25-50 no limit hold'em playing against OTB Red Bar, great player. We have about 150 big blinds each, so we've obviously both chipped up a little bit and rebought. So it changes the game a little bit when you're deeper. He raises the button to 109, basically a min raise if you will. I just call A7, pretty standard defend here, don't really have much choice. The flop comes queen 10-6 with two clubs. I flop a backdoor straight draw and a backdoor nut flush draw. So it's decent flop for ace high, but I check, which is pretty standard here in my spot. I'm going to be checking with pretty much all my hands. And he checks behind. So I'm good some of the time, of course. And he's also pot controlling a lot here. I mean, good players are going to be checking behind with something like 10-9 or even a weak queen to pot control, balance the range, not be too easy to play against. He doesn't just want me to be able to bluff him every time he checks the flop. So I don't necessarily think he has nothing. Turn is a good card for me. It's a 6 of clubs. I bet 125 here. I could just check again, because anytime he's checking back with a hand like a pair, he's going to be calling the turn here, and so I'm putting money in with the worst hand. But with a half pot size bet here, he might even call me with worse hands some of the time, like king 9 with a club or 8-9 with a club to bluff the river. Also because he has a decent amount of equity against a lot of hands that I'm betting with. So it allows him to put money in with a worse pot. It allows me to win a bigger pot if a club comes, and allows me to bluff some river. So I'm kind of taking the lead in the hand here, and of course I could just check call, but then I'm sort of relying on me having the best hand and relying that I hit my hand on the river, because it's going to be hard for me to call the river unless I improve. So by betting, it sort of gives me a little more creative options, and I have plenty of equity. It's not like I'm betting with nothing. I'm betting with a hand that could improve to a very, very strong hand on the river. And he calls me here, which I expect him to do some of the time. The river comes a king of hearts. Now, it's tempting here to continue bluffing the river, and while that is a fine play, I could bluff the river here, but I think that a lot of hands that he called me, I mean, it's a good card to bluff, certainly, even if he has a hand like 10-9. The king of hearts is really a river where it's going to be hard for him to call a bet. Some of his floats on the turn have a king in them, like maybe king jack that check the flop, maybe king 9, something like that, king 8. Any king with a club is going to call, and so all those hands are going to call me on the river. Of course, it's possible for him to have a king, but it's going to be tough for him to call the river with a 10. But I think that given how weakly he played the hand, if he has any showdown value whatsoever, he's going to call a bet here, and that's sort of like the read I got. The pot's not that big. I really have to make like a huge overbet or something to try and get him to fold, and so I just opted to check. And then he bets the river. I was sort of planning on checking and having him check behind and losing the pot. I just think he checks behind with 2-8s or 10-9 all the time, and I just lose, but I didn't really think much of it. But when he bets the river here, now I'm really put in a spot where I'm really wondering what hands he has that he's betting for value. Of course, he could have something like ace-jack. I have an ace in my hand, so a little harder. He could have jack 9, but he might have bet the flop with those hands too. So I'm discounting a lot of hands that he has here. A flush, it's very hard for him to have a flush. He didn't bet the flop. He could have a 6, but maybe he has a 6. Maybe. Or he could just have a bluff. Or he could have something that he's going to bet, for example, like a king. He's betting for value now, but he is going to fold if I check raise. So I think it's a pretty good spot here for me to check raise. And of course I do have a blocker. I have what's called a blocker, meaning I have a card that prevents him from having the nut flush. And if you're going to pick a time to bluff, it's good to do it with a blocker in your hand, simply because it eliminates a lot of the possibilities that your opponent has a hand that you are worried about, which in this case is the nut flush. In this situation, a lot of times I could easily have a strong hand. All my strong hands on the river, like my full houses and my flushes, might decide to check and go for a check raise, because it's very reasonable that I want to win more money, and instead of just betting and winning one bet, I might want to check and win 2 bets. So it's really hard for him to have a really, really strong hand. All of his full houses and flushes would have bet the flop, so he can't really have those, and all of my full houses and flushes would have been played the exact same way. So my range is very possible that it's strong, and his is unlikely that it's extremely strong. So it's a great spot to check raise. And I go for a check raise here, and he folds, and it works. So turns out well. Hope you understand the logic. Hope that helps, and I'll see you next time for the hand of the day. Thanks.